I think empathy is really important, and a focus on simplicity is extremely important. And oftentimes, as engineers, I personally think that many engineers were not given enough training in communications and the softer skills of getting a project done.
The path to this realization came to Animesh Roy while at work. He was making some progress on the energy solutions he'd proposed, but he found it challenging to bring sustainability to the forefront among other priorities. He wasn't getting the results he'd hoped for. He might have wondered to himself, if only others could see things his way, if only they could see the benefits as well as he did. But to effectively make the case for sustainability as a priority, Animesh needed to take a step back. Step back and learn that it would take more than his engineering brain to manage this puzzle. In this episode, Don't Push, Pull. I'm Jay Mullen from Save on Energy. This is the Energy Manager's Playbook, a podcast empowering Ontario energy managers to find success at work. Do you mind just introducing yourself, your name, your role, and your company you work for?
Sure, yeah. My name's Animesh Roy, and I'm the energy manager at Toronto Metropolitan University, or TMU for short.
In the years he's been at TMU, Animesh learned that getting a big urban university to commit to energy initiatives wasn't so much about convincing them that these projects made sense. It was more of a problem of a university's leadership facing too many priorities, competing priorities, and not enough resources to tackle them all. It's the kind of challenge a lot of energy managers face on the job: how to get leadership to support energy projects in a meaningful way.
So when I first joined TMU towards the tail end of 2017, most of my work was really limited towards the technical side, implementing individual measures rather than looking at the big picture. I would conduct audits, study utility data, things like that, and really just compile a list of opportunities so that we could request funding to implement them.
How successful, or how many of those ended up moving forward or getting approval?
Not as many as I would have liked. I would say under 50% for sure. With limited budget and several competing priorities within the institution, many of those identified opportunities were put on the back burner.
I think that's a situation a lot of energy managers find themselves in. And how did that feel in your role? How was that affecting you?
I had a mixture of emotions because it was also my first role within an institutional energy management setting. So up to that point, I'd always been a consultant or a project manager or a contractor. So it was definitely a shift in my mindset because before, I was the guy who would implement the projects, and now it was frustrating to have so many what I thought were home run projects ready to go and insufficient resources to implement them. So it was frustrating, and I think it also showed me that I need to change how I view my work and take a look at the bigger picture.
What's an example of one of those home run projects that you thought was a total shoe-in but didn't end up moving forward for any particular reason?
Many of them were like the obvious ones, like LED lighting retrofits. At that time, a big portion of the campus was still using less efficient fluorescent fixtures. And also, I think many buildings were at an opportune time in the phase of their life cycle that they were due for retrocommissioning. So most of these home run projects were retrocommissioning projects that, to me, pay for themselves back so quickly. So the way I was thinking is, why are we not implementing them to save more money down the road?
I think we know a lot of energy managers who are in similar situations to that. And I think a lot of them think it's hey, once I get this data and can show that and build a business case around it, then these projects that I think are home runs, they're just going to get moving forward. But as you were building that foundation, did that start happening on its own?
I think as a team, we realized that we were doing something wrong. If the value that we are seeing is not translating over to the broader institution, it's really on us for not communicating it effectively. And it really led to us shifting how we viewed our work and how we conveyed value that we were seeing. We went back to the drawing board to see how can we communicate this better in a way that the value translates to non-energy professionals, to non-engineers.
Was there any particular instance or catalyst that made you think it's okay, we need to change what we're doing?
Yes, I don't remember exactly when I took the course, but I'd gone for a Lean Six Sigma training.
And for the audience that may not be familiar, Lean Six Sigma is a way to look at an organization and how they derive value.
Absolutely, yeah. Generate more value, eliminate waste, and get the organization essentially moving in the same cohesive direction. And I realized, so this philosophy that was covered in that training is that rather than focusing on, let's say you picture each individual project as a block, Instead of trying to push that block and force it to a pipeline to implementation, effort has to be made to induce demand that pulls that block in. So right now we had scoped out all these individual projects and we were trying to push them through a pipeline without putting sufficient effort into inducing a demand. I think when we saw it that way, it really reframed what we were lacking in our approach to our work. As an engineer, you think that everyone talks in numbers and specifically in the same type of numbers that you see value in. So it was really stepping outside of my wheelhouse to translate that value differently in order to induce that demand. So it was a lot of actually non-technical skills that I realized had to be employed to do that.
And taking that tack away from a more hard engineering approach into taking a strategic view of it, what did some of the early actions or parts of that plan look like?
It was really trying many different approaches. I think a key thing that we worked on was to essentially find out what moved the needle within the university. Who did the senior leadership actually listen to? And of course, within a university, what makes a university is its faculty and its students. So we decided to ask them. We set up a comprehensive engagement strategy to actually poll the community members and ask them, how important is sustainability to you? Would you base your decision to come to a university based on its performance in sustainability, whether it's waste management, decarbonization efforts, energy efficiency? The response was overwhelmingly yes, they cared a lot. And so we had all this data now. We had data on the energy side, we had data on the engagement side. And using that, we decided to try painting a compelling story saying that, hey, look, sustainability is not just about saving operational costs, because oftentimes in institutions, utility costs are a fraction of total operational costs, right? So if your selling point is that, hey, I will reduce this fraction by 10% in 3 years, the value may not translate. But if you go to a university and say, look, if we don't take action in time, it will down the road impact the type of faculty and the type of talent we attract to the university. Then something flips because it's something of strategic importance to the institution.
How did you go about getting those opinions or learning what the students, faculty thought about the university and sustainability?
Yeah, we had a whole pretty big engagement campaign. We basically set up in-person polling booths in areas of the campus that had the most amount of traffic. We also did a lot of email surveys with several reminders so that we could get as many responses as we could from as diverse a group as we could. We wanted to make sure that it wasn't just students, or even within students, it wasn't just graduate students and no undergraduate students, right?
Was that a pretty straightforward process, or were there any surprises that came up?
It was all good news for us because I think, of course, in the back of your mind, what do you do if the response comes back saying that, hey, we actually don't care about this? Obviously, we wouldn't give up. But thankfully, our faculty, students, staff, all community members, they over 80% or 85% of responses said that they strongly care about the university's sustainability performance. So we knew that we had a compelling story to reframe how we approached energy efficiency and decarbonization.
Was there any other points that really resonated, or information or data that particularly resonated with leadership on that?
I think, yes, because it was also the performance of some of our neighboring institutions in terms of their efforts towards net zero targets, electrification, energy efficiency. Humber College has made major strides, as have U of T. And we need to start catching up before it's too late. So I think that was a big selling point as well. And it's not to say that leadership was never sold on the vision. It was just amongst so many competing priorities. But we were increasingly able to convey a sense of urgency that, look, there's a strategic importance to not deferring this any longer.
A lot of times when we talk to energy managers, a big thing that comes up is that role of the executive sponsor, like someone who's senior in the organization that can help make energy a priority. Was there a particular person that you recruited or pitched to help lead that effort at the senior level?
Yeah, at the time, our sustainability manager, Stephanie McPhee, she was really instrumental in getting those conversations started. She's since left TMU and she actually now manages the sustainability office in Dalhousie out in Halifax. But we would all report up to the executive director for campus development, Mark Detweiler, and he's been a champion for sustainability efforts. He gets the value of it and he knows how to balance it with priorities, because if you go into a situation simply not showing an ability to see the bigger picture, you often lose faith from your stakeholders.
And were there any specific people that you engaged that were, those catalysts that helped you open more of those doors?
Yes, initially we engaged with the executive group, or EG for short, and that EG comprises senior leadership from academia, from operations, from finance, and once they agreed on the vision to have a plan that would chart out a pathway to improving sustainability on campus, we then set a climate change and sustainability action planning committee. We had close to about 25 members on that committee, representing undergrad students, graduate students, faculty, various business operations like campus food operations and facilities operations. And the role of that committee was to create the sustainability action plan and put it into a list of action items that we need to implement within a set time. And it also identified directly responsible parties for implementing individual action items.
Okay. I think that speaks to what you mentioned before of a different approach. When you were looking to engage with the broader executive group, how did that pitch look different from the project pitches that you had been doing before?
Because the project pitches before were really limited to the technical positives of a project, right? For example, if I want to do a heat pump retrofit, I would sell it to an operations team completely differently. I would tell them that these heat pumps will reduce issues caused by the existing steam system by X amount of percentage and will save you 3,000 staff hours annually. Versus if I pitch it to the executive group, I would pitch the exact same project in a way where I would say that, hey, look, this is going to decarbonize our campus by X% and it will really bring us to this much in alignment with our intermediate net zero goals. So it's the same project, but it's really understanding what moves the needle for them and conveying the value in the language that they see.
I think that sounds like a really excellent way to engage them and meet them where they are at their level in the organization. You make it sound really easy. But I know there's a lot of energy managers out there in their organizations that really struggle with that level of engagement. Was there anything that you had to learn about a new approach, or like how did you make that shift and accomplish that?
The key difference, I would say, is asking a lot more questions and listening a lot more before conveying your ideas. And that conveys that I care about how you view the situation. I'm not trying to simply change your mind to see this job or this effort in the way that I see it. I actually want to understand how you see it so that we can find common ground. I think empathy is really important, and a focus on simplicity is extremely important. And oftentimes as engineers, I personally think that many engineers were not given enough training in communications and the softer skills of getting a project done. Sometimes, not often, but I've even seen solutions that look more complicated than they need to be. And sometimes we are trained to think that a more complex solution is better because that means you put more thought into it. But with more work experience under my belt, I have actually noticed it's the opposite. Oftentimes, simpler solutions require more thought. But for anyone who's struggling in getting institutional buy-in, what I have to say is channel your frustration into something that resembles more like self-reflection. Audit how you're approaching your work. If the technical case is so easy, but the value is not being translated, it's actually empowering to take responsibility for the lack of progress, because that way you know that it's in your hands. So put yourself in the shoes of the person controlling the finances, put yourself in the shoes of the operations manager, put yourself in the shoes of the executive and see that if you came to them, where is the translation not coming across?
That's also something that's really hard. And what were the results of this change in strategy, of taking this more of an engagement approach with leadership? Like, what have you seen come out of that?
Yeah, so it's been really promising so far. In April this year, we launched our first ever sustainability action plan. And that includes, for the first time ever in the university's history, public commitments to decarbonizations. We have a public commitment to net zero scope 1 and 2 emissions by 2045, with an intermediate target of 40% reduction compared to our 2019 baseline by 2035. I should also mention that the action plan is not just a bunch of goals that we set aside with no technical pathway on how to get it done. It also includes a whole list of measures that need to be implemented in order to get our goals achieved, along with offices that are responsible for the implementation. We also recently got awarded STARS Gold. So STARS is a certification system that applies to universities. And so we got awarded STARS Gold for some of our efforts on campus. But there's a lot of work left to be done as well. For example, we have a goal of reaching STARS Platinum by 2035. And the leap from gold to platinum is a big one. So really, these two goals, like the STARS Platinum goal, as well as the net zero goals, if you're achieving your net zero goals, you're also on track to achieve your STARS Platinum goals.
And going back to before you took this new strategy, have you seen a change in how leadership is receptive to these projects that are being pitched to achieve these goals?
Oh, absolutely. Now we're getting questions like, okay, when can we start? How much do you need? Things like that. So I think they absolutely see it as an institutional priority and one of very high strategic importance because the university in the past has achieved its goal in its campus master plans. And so this new plan explicitly states a sustainable campus as a key priority. So there's a lot of buy-in from my executives.
So you are starting to see some of that project pull that you were talking about and not try and just push these projects through.
Absolutely. The pull has been created, and now it's really our job to make sure that we deliver on that induced demand.
Looking back to the Animesh that was feeling the frustrations and thinking that a new approach was needed, what do you think he would say if he saw that position that you're in now and what's happening now?
He would say a few things. I think he would be proud of what has been achieved and the growth that has been created within the person as a result of that. I do believe that I've become a better communicator of technical concepts to a non-technical audience and also financial concepts, so I can speak those languages better. Part of me would also be a bit daunted in a good way because I think we really have our work cut out for us. I can't go too much into details, but we are exploring what the future of our district energy system looks like. And I think that would be a huge accomplishment for the university because it would essentially eliminate close to 50 to 60% of our campus emissions if we can find out a better solution and bring that district energy infrastructure into the new century. So I think it would be a mixture of pride in what's been accomplished, but also knowledge that much work is left to be done.
Well, Animesh, thank you for joining me today, sharing the story. I think it's an incredible story of growth and the change within the organization.
Thank you so much.
What I like most about Animesh's story is how his success at making the case to prioritize sustainability intertwines with his own personal growth as a communicator. He approached a challenge not by doubling down on technical fixes. Instead, he stepped back and reevaluated how he communicates and connects with others. He could have kept pushing projects forward, hoping they'd eventually catch on. Instead, he recognized the need to get others on board, to have pull rather than just push. That shift in perspective, from focusing on the solution to focusing on the people who'd benefit from it, highlights the power of empathy. I also appreciate how Animesh talked about simplifying his approach and really listening to the people he was trying to get support from. It's a good reminder that clarity isn't just about being concise. It's about understanding what others need to hear and meeting them where they are. Look at the results. TMU's Sustainability Action Plan, public decarbonization commitments, STARS Gold certification. Those didn't happen because of one big technical breakthrough. They happened because Animesh helped everyone by building trust, communicating clearly, and aligning toward a shared goal. When we're stuck, it's easy to think the answer lies in working harder or coming up with more data. But sometimes it's about asking ourselves, are we really listening? Are we making our case in a way that resonates? My thanks to Animesh Roy and Toronto Metropolitan University. Now, I would love to hear what resonates with you, the listeners, about what you're hearing in this podcast. What kind of challenges are you facing at work? What victories have you earned in the energy sector? Send me an email with your thoughts about the show and your ideas for future episodes. emp@saveonenergy.ca, or find a link in the show notes to this episode on your device. You'll also find a link to the Save on Energy website, where you can learn how to improve your energy management practices. I'm Jay Mullen. This is the Energy Manager's Playbook, a podcast from Save on Energy.